Mixed martial arts have presented themselves as a human attraction since ancient times. Not the sport itself has evolved, but also everything around it. New rules, weight categories, referees, judging on scorecards. All of that is responsible for the sport and entertainment we watch today.
This sport is the only sport that you could really name that if you go back to 1993 and you look at it from 2023, you're looking at a massive evolution in the game.
You heard Joe Rogan, people. MMA is taking the world by storm. 30 years have passed since the first MMA fight, and the sport is growing daily and spreading contagiously to all continents. Rapid progress was made possible by top fighters who brought something new to the sport with each performance, and 3 decades later, we are where we are. Over time, the barbaric competition transformed into a recognized sport, showing that the fight was much more than a slugfest. Opening various categories led to various countries presenting their fighters in sanctioned competitions. More and more gyms began to appear, each with its style, qualities, and way of working. What is beautiful is the discipline and respect that is developed between combat sports athletes around the world, because these are the pillars of MMA. Thanks to disciplined and expert trainers, over time, we have turned from one-dimensional fighters into well-rounded fighters from all corners of the world. In today's modern age of telecommunications, advertising, and quick access to everything we need, we can see up-and-coming fighters progressing much faster than the old-school legends of the sport back then.
Everything's so high level now. Everyone's so good in every aspect of the game.
The rule set has been adapted so that it does not endanger the fighter's life and enables a fair fight. Reliable judge staff has almost completely neutralized attempts to cheat and achieve false victories. MMA quickly evolved into one of the fairest sports today, where 2 men square off in the most manly way over 3 or 5 rounds of 5 minutes each. Everything remains outside the cage except for well-prepared physical fitness and martial knowledge. In the fight of 2, only one emerges as the winner, and the audience enjoys it as it did 648 years before Christ. Given that the evolution of MMA as a complete sports performance and entertainment is truly an inexhaustible topic, we will focus on the evolution of techniques on the battlefield itself. Every fight starts from the feet, and to know how to fight on the feet, you first need to know how to defend yourself. As we saw from the Don Frye vs. Yoshihiro Takayama fight at Pride, keeping one's head was not a priority. Thanks to the evolution of the stand-up game, fighters began to use a safer and more tactical approach, giving a feeling of comfort when exchanging punches in the pocket due to the fighter's awareness of their trained defense. Fighters stopped behaving as if they were fighting on the street. These things brought the exchanges to a new and more beautiful level, and one of the oldest examples is the fight between Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner. Modern examples include Weili Zhang versus Johanna Jedrzejczyk.
Spins, wait for it. Back fist.
Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald.
Yes, Lawler is. Lands it.
He's hurt. This may be it. It's
And
in.
especially the fights of Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, and Dustin Poirier, who turned the striking exchanges into art. Remember the old one-punch targeting to shut down the opponent? This was overcome when a more fluid boxing technique with trained combinations began to be used. Accordingly, head movement, footwork, and shifting stances adapted for MMA play an important role both defensively and offensively. Anderson Silva is one of the head examples of old-school fighters, and today Dominic Cruz, Sean O'Malley, and Corey Sandhagen are just some of the representatives. Speaking of Anderson Silva, his clinch game is the best example of the stand-up revolution. Silva presented a clinch clinic against Stephen Bonner, and he broke Forrest Griffin with the same technique. As one thing leads to another, the representatives of Muay Thai and kickboxing have started using knees to the body as a deadly addition to the clinch, but also to the head. Alistair Overeem is an old-school synonym for knees, and Fabricio Verdum's brutalization of Roy Nelson will never get old. Do you remember the famous sentence, "Leg kicks are not that bad"? Well, the kickmasters have shown the opposite. Striker's game became enriched with various kicks with the arrival of fighters who relied on their killer kicks. Targeting the opponent from head to toe, Jose Aldo and Edson Barboza are phenomenal examples that introduce the public to effective low kicks. Lyoto Machida also, with his front kicks to the chin. And we must not forget the legendary Mirko Cro Cop and missiles in his left leg would extinguish anyone he touches with a high kick. Israel Adesanya has exceptional ease in using all of kicks, and when you thought you'd seen all types of kicks, kickboxer and karate master Stephen Wonderboy Thompson appears. Wonderboy showed effective spinning kicks, side kicks, and all types of kicks that exist. The evolution of low kicks has its own story, from hitting the thigh to hitting the kneecap, with different kickers having different targets. If anyone thought that it couldn't get worse than low kicks, you should know that you were mistaken. John Jones, Robert Whittaker, and Darren Till tend to use oblique kicks, which have become notorious for their destructive results on the opponent's knee. Khalil Roundtree is no stranger to these types of kicks, with one TKO to his name. An interesting fact about Khalil is his kicks to the body of the grounded opponent, due to the rule that you cannot kick the downed opponent in the head. Roundtree found an adaptable replacement. Still, some decided to shoot low. Benson Henderson, one of the older examples, and Dustin Poirier, one of the modern ones. Calf kicks have the uncanny ability to numb an opponent's leg faster than thigh low kicks. Conor McGregor showed us that there's still room for improvement in the fight against Donald Cerrone when he crushed the Cowboy's nose.
A couple early shoulder strikes is in green.
After using the same shots on Dustin Poirier, Dustin appropriated the trick and continued to use it in subsequent matches. When we talk about the evolution of wrestling and MMA, many fighters with a wrestling background have displayed new possibilities in the fight. Frankie Edgar, John Jones, George St. Pierre, and Chael Sonnen proved that wrestling is the supreme base. However, it would be shameful not to talk about the way of wrestling brought by the inexorable wrestlers from Dagestan, especially in recent years. Surely, you all thought of Khabib Nurmagomedov, and you are not wrong, but after Khabib came a whole army of top Dagestani wrestlers with some new tricks. If we credit the above fighters with wrestling, then we will credit the Dagestanis with incredible control along the fence and on the ground. If your opponent's last name contains Magomedov, don't even bother standing up with him on top of you. The way they distribute their weight over the opponent gives them maximum control with minimum fatigue. Grappling stopped being static and became extremely technical, as evidenced by various scrambles in recent matches, such as Beneil Dariush versus Mateusz Gamrot, and Islam Makhachev versus Arman Saryukin. Spectators got a clear view of who's the more dominant fighter after a couple of grappling exchanges. The use of clinch wrestling and sweeping of unstable opponents changed the wrestling game, which consisted of double and single legs, and counter wrestling received a lot of attention. Taking the opponent down after pressing him to the fence and trapping their legs with their own to ground pound the victim. The Dagestani handcuff is much more common than before, and the way they keep opponents on the ground with their control is a masterpiece. The list of fighters with these abilities is long, and you can see it in the arsenal of anyone who flew in from Dagestan. Exceptional satisfaction is felt when the opponent is forced to surrender. With the arrival of Gracie in MMA, there was a sudden evolution of grappling and submission. The power of BJJ became apparent, and defeating a larger opponent became easy. Most likely, this made the biggest martial revolution in making the complete fighter. From ordinary chokes, practitioners have found a million ways to choke their opponent, and BJJ as a base has proven effective for ending any match. Fighters who adapted Jitsu with ground and pound managed to finish their matches with a technical knockout, and the use of elbows by John Jones proved to be effective both in stand-up and on the ground.
Jones again with that spin.
Yeah, try to set it up.
Being locked in Tony Ferguson's triangle wasn't the only threat, as the opponent also had to watch out for incoming elbows. Triangles, arm bars, and chokes from all positions have become incredible. Just when we think we've seen all the submissions, Korean Zombie and Bryce Mitchell show up with an incredibly rare twister. It is safe to say that leg locks also brought a revolution in sports because, as John Danaher says, why ignore 50% of the human body? If they tapped late, the leg would break and they would be out of the arena for a long time. Ryan Hall's Imanari roll that allows a quick take of the opponent's leg proved rare but effective. Submission artists of the modern era are certainly Charles Oliveira, the record holder in the submission finishes. Demian Maia, BJ Penn, and Kazushi Sakuraba are all grappler elites worth mentioning.